Welcome to Let the Quran Speak. Violent extremists are experts at using social media to radicalize and mobilize followers. Can social media fight extremism? I'm joined by Shahed Amanullah. He served as Senior Advisor for Technology in the U.S. Department of State from 2011 to 2014. Shahed, welcome to Let the Quran Speak.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Now, we've heard so many stories about these extremists being so adept at using social media.
Yeah.
How did they get that way, and why can't we catch up?
It's really so. Extremism is often couched in language of passion and anger, and it's so hard to counter passion and anger with reason. And because the internet loves that kind of speech, extremist sentiments have gone around the world before we even got out of bed. And not only that, but extremists have a way of connecting to each other with their passions in ways that we haven't. We may outnumber them, but even a small group of people can do a lot of damage. I want to focus on Christchurch, for example. And what happened with Christchurch is that the person who committed that horrible crime literally wrote on his gun all of the parts of his ideology that he had learned from his colleagues around the world over the internet. He called out Montreal, he called out Norway, he called out all these different things, and he connected the dots. This is what extremists do. They see themselves as part of a global movement. They draw strength from each other. Then they communicate with each other to communicate these ideas. And then, of course, the last thing we did, which I never thought I knew it was coming, but I didn't think I would actually see it, was somebody live streaming an act of terrorism and murder, right? And
so I've been thinking about these individuals who are violent extremists and what sort of profile they have. And I've noticed that they're disparate. They come from all sorts of socioeconomic backgrounds. They're doing it for all sorts of reasons. Some are young, some are old, some are male, some are female. So, I guess it's very difficult to catch these individuals online because they don't fit a particular profile.
I've had the opportunity to speak with various people in governments, both the Canadian government and the US government, on this issue. And the one thing I constantly tell them is this: you either fight all extremism or you fight none of it. And the reason I say that is because they all operate, even though they're coming from different segments and that sometimes are directly opposed to each other, they draw on a lot of the same flaws in people. People who are feeling threatened. They feel that violence is the only answer to what they're doing. They feel that whatever their in-group is the righteous group and it needs to dominate and put aside all the other groups. They don't want to live in harmony with other people. The idea of pluralism is anathema to them. So I'm describing everyone from far right to Daesh to white supremacists to whatever. I mean, they all that's what they all have in common. And until the internet came around, they weren't able to mobilize and amplify, but now they do, and particularly with social media. And what makes it really dangerous is that, to be frank and honest with you, no group of people or government or anyone else has made a dent in any of these people.
I remember talking to you 10 years ago,
Yeah.
and you were telling me, well, Sophia, there's a deep dark web, and
Yeah.
there are all these individuals that we don't really see, but
Yeah.
but now they're not on the deep dark
Yeah.
web anymore.
Yeah.
They're in the
They
mainstream.
kind of don't have to be.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all out in the open, and people are kind of, the problem is that, and look, I'm a believer in free speech. I believe that bad ideas need to be countered with good ideas. But the problem is that you have people who operate in the open with all the precursor ideologies to violent extremism. So if you look on Facebook even, and Facebook's very aware of this, but they still don't catch them all. You will find the racist sites, the white supremacist sites. You will find people espousing ideologies of hate all over the place, even though they don't step into the realm of violence, which seems to be the line that everyone uses, but there's enough of them out there that innocent people are reading this stuff and it's resonating with them. Because remember, we also live in a world that's in turmoil right now. And whenever
we have political leaders who are espousing these ideas as
well.
Exactly.
But they're espousing it because people are vulnerable to it. The world is all over the place. People don't know where they fit in. Nationalist leaders from Hungary to India to America are feeding into that and propagating it because it builds power. Whenever somebody is afraid, you can take advantage of that. We have a lot of people that are afraid in this world. And so it's daunting to think about how we could fight that.
So how could I mean, you mentioned Facebook.
Yeah.
How could Facebook fight that? Do you think they're doing a good job?
I don't think they're doing a good job, and I speak as somebody who's worked very closely with Facebook.
Because they're saying it's very challenging to
Well,
deal
it is, but the problem is that, I mean, the problem is also a problem of volume. I mean, we have 2 billion people to monitor on social media. It's really hard to, you have to hire way more people, and in multiple languages. Here's a perfect example, Sri Lanka, right? I spoke with Facebook, their India office, a couple years ago, and I told them there are things happening in Sri Lanka, in Sinhalese, a language that I don't think you get, that suggests to us that there will be bloodshed against Muslims in that country soon if you don't do something about it. Sure enough, within 6 months, there was bloodshed, and the government, this is before the church attacks, and the government shut down Facebook just to stop the spread of this violence. And what happened after the church bombings in Sri Lanka? The government shut down Facebook again because people were using it to mobilize people. People use WhatsApp in India to mobilize people for this cow vigilantism. You know, they'll find some Muslim, organize a mob, and go slaughter that person in the street because they think that they did something to a cow. You know.
So does Facebook not have the capability, or do they not want to develop the capability?
No, I think the problem is so big. It's just a daunting, even for Facebook. Even if they wanted to, they would have to hire hundreds of thousands of people. Just remember, you have to police every single thing, and not only that. Think about WhatsApp, right? WhatsApp is encrypted communications. It would be very difficult for Facebook to actually get into those spaces and realize that a group of people is being radicalized to murder people. So I mean, part of the challenge is just a global cultural challenge. You know, we've become a global society where violence is an option, and you know, it's not as simplistic as like violent video games and things like that. It's like for some reason we think that killing people in some circumstance is okay, and this transcends religion, transcends community, transcends East-West. What are we going to do? This is my question.
What's the solution? I feel very depressed listening to you.
No, look, it's depressing, but again, good people vastly outnumber bad people. So how do we get good people to take control of the spaces that they're in so that they can remove this idea that violence against their neighbors is an option?
Is part of it making people feel like, as citizens, that they're engaged and they're being listened to by the governments that are in power? People
need to feel valued. If people feel valued, they don't do things like this. People hurt their neighbor when they feel like their life depends on it. They're threatened in some way, existentially. And there are too many people in this world that feel that way, for whatever reason, right? So we need to build a world where people feel that they're valued, that they're heard when they're speaking, and that this idea of mercy. We've talked about this idea of mercy so much. It's so deep in our faith, but so absent in our spaces. We need to create a world where people approach each other with mercy. And I think as Muslims, we have to model that for other Muslims, and then we have to model that for other citizens of this world.
But do you think that will eradicate violent extremism?
I do. I absolutely do. Look, I have to be an optimist about this. I can't afford not to be. I think that we're seeing a particular world right now because we're in a very unique space in time where social media has transformed and transfixed us, where we're victims of our inner demons. But I think humanity can grow beyond that. But we have to gradually pull it out of this abyss where we're now just enmeshed in this kind of space where we are afraid of everybody enough to lash out at people, and that we tolerate violence. And this is a global endeavor. It involves political leaders, it involves religious leaders, it involves ordinary people like you and me.
I'm going to grasp onto the hope that you are espousing because, there's no other choice.
We are a people of hope. That's what we have to do.
Thank you so much, Shahed, for appearing on the show.
You're welcome.
We're going to take a short break. We'll be back. Please stay with us.